Ладно, пес, давай быстрее, пока я не Давай! Осторожнее! Держись! Отличный бросок, пес! Иди, песик, уходи! Все будет хорошо, только... Что это? Держись! Давай сойдем, пока его не понесло дальше.
To convey a sense of urgency, we originally designed Alex to nag the player pretty frequently. She'd say things like, "Hurry up, keep moving." Whether or not this created a sense of urgency is debatable, but after about 3 minutes of this, the one thing it definitely did was make the player hate Alex. This was one of the observations that eventually led us to switch Alex from generally leading the players to almost always following. Through playtesting, we discovered that players much preferred to set the pace themselves, and that they especially disliked virtually any hint of bossiness from Alex.
Невероятно. А я и не знала. Ну и высота. Надо найти способ спуститься к ядру. Была бы карта.
Резонантная сингулярность. Резонантная сингулярность. Тревога. Внутренним группам.
We populate our environments with spots where players can take a break to look out over an expanse of cool scenery. We call these vistas. This particular vista was designed to give anyone familiar with the Citadel interior from Half-Life 2 a good view of what it looks like now that everything's falling apart. The pods that are sliding off their track and into the abyss really sell the idea that the Citadel is half abandoned and in chaos.
In an early version of this map, Alex led the player through the whole thing. To make Alex seem less omniscient, we had her access a console here to get her bearings. It exploded, which helped drive home the point that the Citadel was in bad shape, but generally, it was a long pause in the action without a lot of payoff. After we made the high-level decision to have Alex follow the player, this entire scene became irrelevant, and we happily cut the whole thing.
Тревога. Зарегистрирован нарушитель.
Боже мой! Сталкеры! Они нас не тронут, если мы их не тронем. Я отключу поле, и мы... Черт! Не могу убрать поле. Его что-то... Сталкер. Он удерживает его с той стороны. У нас нет времени искать другой путь.
Внутренним группам.
Только как нам тут пройти?
Открыть автоклавы.
Шаровые мины. Они помогут нам выбраться. Найди, где заканчивается этот желоб. Я придумала, как их использовать.
Training is one of the fundamental tenets of our design philosophy. Before the player is required to utilize some new game mechanic, or new weapon, or face a new monster under pressure in a dangerous situation, we always introduce the concept in a relatively calm, but ideally still entertaining way. This entire scene teaches the player that Alex can convert roller mines so that they can be used as a friendly weapon. Later, the player is required to do this in more pressing circumstances, but at this point, everything's still pretty calm. In the original design, the player retrieved the roller mine from a dispenser and used it to take out a Combine soldier who was holding the field from the other side. Eventually, we scrapped that idea and combined the roller mine training with some stalker exposition that originally occurred in a separate scene.
In a good puzzle, the player is presented with an overall goal and then faces a number of smaller challenges in pursuit of that goal. In the case of the stalker puzzle, we start with, how do I open the door? From there, we move to, how do I get to the stalker? Then, how do I get to the roller mines? How do I get the roller mine back to Alex? And finally, how do I use the roller mine to disable the stalker?
Начать диагностику. Резонантная сингулярность. Резонантная сингулярность. Всеобщая тревога. Всеобщая тревога. Внутренним группам стабилизации открыть автоклавы. Нарушение работы автоклав и защитных полей.
Нашел. Отец научил меня перенастраивать датчики цели. Чуть-чуть переколбасить схему, и мина на нашей стороне. Держи так, чтобы я доставала. Поднеси ее сюда, я перенастрою схему. Готово. Она нестабильна, но продержится достаточно долго, чтобы уничтожить сталкеров. Окей. Путь свободен. Идем.
Нарушение работы автоклавов и защитных полей.
We wanted to create an atmosphere of urgency in the Citadel, with Alex and the player focused on getting to the core to stop the impending collapse. Initially, we tried to reflect that urgency through Alex's behavior and acting. This proved to be unsustainable, however. If the player didn't choose to advance, Alex eventually ran out of lines or animations and was forced into a very non-urgent idle states. We found that the best approach was for Alex to have such implicit trust in and sympathy with the player that she's always content to proceed at whatever pace the player chooses. Once we adopted this principle, lines where Alex sounded impatient or frustrated with the pace of progress quickly stood out and were cut.
Я рада, что мы в одной связке. Комбайны. Похоже, они так спешат отсюда, что не обращают на нас никакого внимания. нам пробраться через этот завал?
Нарушение работы автоклавов и защитных полей.
We created a new Citadel destruction set of broken combine panels and prefabs for the interior spaces to help make the Citadel look like it was on the verge of exploding. We also introduced a strong ambient orange color to help sell the fact that the Citadel was in a much different state from the last time the player passed through. The orange atmosphere was justified due to all the fires and smoke inside the Citadel.
Тревога.
Молодец! Вот это неожиданность. Бежим отсюда, пока сами не исчезли без следа.
Тревога.
Черт побери! Нам обязательно туда?
The primary goal of the first Citadel map is to communicate to players that the Citadel is falling apart. The Vortex was a late addition to the map in an effort to beef up the idea that the Citadel was becoming a very dangerous place. We had particular difficulty in conveying the danger zone here. In early playtests, players thought that the entire bridge was dangerous at all times. Some additional effects work helped let players know where the dangerous areas were. We would have loved to base more gameplay on this Vortex idea, but we just didn't have the time.
Всеобщая тревога. Внутренний движок стабилизации. Открыть автоклавы.
Успели?
Всеобщая тревога. Внутренним блоком стабилизации. Открыть автоклавы.
Что здесь было? Что это за чертовщина? Надеюсь, здесь есть что-нибудь полезное. Попробую узнать дорогу к ядру.
Тревога. Зарегистрирован.
Помочь вам заполучить землю, но мне нужна ваша помощь. Жизнь по ту сторону портала невозможна. Смените место назначения. Я не смогу там выжить.
Слава богу, просто старая
Я в
запись.
роли носителя. Да вы шутите? Я же не могу. Ладно, черт с ним.
Попробуй найти
Вот что
карту.
будет. Поспешите, он почти догнал меня. Вот.
Что за черт?
Тревога. Зарегистрирован нарушитель.
Так где это? Что за чертовщина? Что бы это ни было, оно исчезло. Уходим отсюда.
We revealed the pod here to let players see it up close. At the same time, we didn't want players to get too good a look at what's inside. An old version of the scene had the pod simply hanging from the ceiling, It would burst open and then charge up your gravity gun, but not do much else. The current scene gives us a much more dramatic reveal of the pod, and an opportunity to introduce the mind blasts it's capable of emitting. Though they don't play a large role in Episode 1, these guys were a functional requirement of Episode 2, which meant we effectively had to ship a piece of that episode early.
We decided this space needed to look unique and appear to have more significance than the rest of the Citadel areas the player had already traveled through, while at the same time feeling as though it was still made with Combine technology. This room introduces a story point that plays a big role in Episode 2, so the player has to feel like something important is going on in here. A different fog setting as well as different light styles and configurations helped achieve this. The red lighting is a good contrast to the traditional blue-green colors of the Citadel.
It's important that the player has some empathy for Alex, rather than seeing her as just a bullet-spitting robot. The brief recovery scene after the pod mind attack reminds the player that Alex is also affected by events in the world.
Гордон, что происходит?
Конфискационное поле включено.
Смотри, что-то происходит с гравипушкой. Зарядилась, как в реакторе Грина. Их система безопасности сработала против них. Нам это как раз на руку.
Тревога. Зарегистрирован нарушитель.
The Lightbridge ball sockets are a clear example of our training approach to new gameplay elements. We train the players with a leading example, confirm they understand the concept, then switch up the problem set and make them use it in a new way. The first bridge shows players the solution, the second one confirms they understand it, and the third, knowing they understand the gameplay mechanic, challenges them in a new way using that mechanism.
Тревога. Зарегистрирован нарушитель.
Комбайн.
Having trained the player that balls fit into sockets, we wanted to introduce a puzzle where the question was how to get the ball into the socket. The puzzle we came up with involved a socket with an object blocking it, so that the player would have to ricochet a ball into place. This sounded simple until we actually tried to implement it. If we made the covering opaque, playtesters didn't realize that there was a socket behind it. When we made it translucent, they often didn't see it was there, and were confused when their shot bounced off. Making it movable was a red herring, making people think that they could actually knock it away. A couple of subtle art changes helped. We added some more prominent shadowing and made the glass panel flash when it was hit with a ball. Some playtesters consistently searched for a position to get a direct shot, which we didn't discourage as an alternate solution.
Тревога.